before COVID put a halt on a lot of different activities and a lot of travel around the world, a lot of my job involved going out to different warships and having to do different assessments and do a lot of modeling and analysis and things like that. I would lead teams, and in doing that, we would have to deploy on different ships. When you do that, it's probably not all that shocking that, you can't necessarily just wear whatever you want. Sometimes it actually makes sense to wear some stuff that we would maybe consider a little bit tactical. Having some pants that are coated in like Teflon thread, so when you get ship's grease on them, you can just kind of wipe it off. That is an awesome asset to be able to have. But even though it served a purpose, that didn't really stop us from continuing to wear some of the stuff whenever we wouldn't be in that environment. Sometimes it would look a little silly almost and became somewhat of an inside joke that we would wear all of our tactical looking stuff. We were just walking around in the offices. If you want to see somebody who looks out of place, imagine a cubicle where there's a bunch of white collar individuals and somebody comes walking in their tactical pants and their polo shirt that has the little loop for their eyeglasses and the little slots on their sleeve for their pens. It looks silly, and that's why we did it. But if we were all being honest with ourselves, you felt a little bit cool too. Even though everybody else looked at you like you were an idiot, you definitely felt cool, like everybody, was looking at you like you were edgy and tactical. There is this fascination with the military and with being tactical that you could see all around us. You could see all kinds of people who, if we're being honest, probably don't look like they were in the physical condition to be in the military, walking around with all of their military-looking type of gear. Their crazy pants and the shirts with the American flags on the sleeves and the ball caps that have the Velcro where they can put the American flag on the top. All these are well and good, but what happens whenever this militaristic mentality starts seeping its way into our faith? Sure, the Bible does have a couple instances where it uses some metaphors and some imagery of soldiers, for example, to describe how we should approach our faith. But you're actually not going to find a whole lot in the Bible that talks about really taking it to the outside world and, fighting people who don't believe what we believe in and, making certain to root out all those evil, horrible people that are inside the church. That idea of aggression isn't really there. Instead, what you end up seeing Christ talking about is going up to people in love, having patience, having gentleness, not getting into useless arguments, standing up for what is true and standing up for your faith, but doing it in such a way that people are attracted by the peculiar sense of peace that you seem to have about you. Many Christians today seem to have lost this, and sometimes I wonder if maybe what they're doing is confusing passion with aggression. The two aren't necessarily the same thing, and what can happen when we show a sense of aggression with our faith is we can actually end up pushing people away. People will show aggression towards the outside world when they act as Christians and, will sit here and shake an angry fist at, a world that believes things morally that we don't believe. People will show aggression inside the church towards other Christians when they want to worship the wrong way or when they don't believe things in the exact right manner. Instead of approaching these things as opportunities to disciple, to teach, to instruct, and maybe for they themselves to learn something different, they instead choose to go to anger. And most unfortunately, some people choose to insert aggression into their faith when it comes to their own skin, flesh, and blood, their own family, how they treat individuals that are inside their own household because they think that they're doing something that's particularly heinous that displeases God, not understanding that God also accepted you and me when we were in our worst state. Aggression has found its way into the practice of faith of so many individuals, and in doing that, it has actually threatened to push the lost further away. Here in your small groups, you're going to explore this a little bit more, but I want you to ask yourself this. What are times where you feel you have seen people try to execute their faith with a sense of aggression rather than peace? And how would have approaching it with peace changed how others would receive the message of Christ? When I was preparing for this lesson, there was one piece of scripture I kept going back to, and it's something that we end up seeing in James, where he actually gives somewhat of a diagnosis for why some individuals will interject anger and quarrels into how they practice faith. And he tied it all back to one common trait: jealousy. Now, jealousy might sound a little interesting when you think about aggression, but I want you to think about that. I mean, aggression that, people end up showing to the outside world oftentimes can be the result of jealousy, both in terms of, I'm jealous maybe that the world is doing something that I feel like I can't do and I want it, or it might be the other way around. I'm jealous that they're not doing something that I'm doing, and I want that same thing. I want that same freedom to not have to do something. I don't want to have to forgive people. I don't want to have to be compassionate towards other individuals. So in that sense, jealousy can lead us towards anger to the outside world. But then jealousy inside the church can also lead us to anger. Jealousy in terms of, I'm jealous that somebody else maybe has a different way of doing something, and I'm jealous that I don't get to enjoy that. I feel locked and stuck into the type of faith that I've chosen for myself. Or maybe they're jealous because they think another individual maybe thinks some things different than them. It's almost like an intellectual jealousy. I'm jealous of the fact that maybe they understand something different, or maybe they have a wisdom that I don't have. And in every single one of these instances, I think it's interesting how that sense of jealousy can lead us to a sense of insecurity in ourselves. Maybe the reason why other people are doing something different is because there's something I don't understand. Maybe the reason why some other Christians will practice their faith differently is because they've had things revealed to them that I haven't had revealed to me. Maybe there's something other people have that I want, and that makes me very insecure. And rather than deal with my insecurities, I will go to aggression, and I will fight individuals who have things that I don't have and try to argue that those things are bad, or I'll try to say that somebody understanding something differently than me is an inherently bad thing. All this may sound very maybe philosophical to some of you, but simply put, we sometimes get very insecure about the things that we believe and the things we feel convicted to do because we're surrounded by other individuals who aren't us. They don't see things the same way that we see them. Maybe God has actually revealed different things to them than He's revealed to us for specific reasons. This is one of the reasons why, when it comes to our faith, we have to seek out contentment in what Christ has called us to do and called us to be. Contentment is the cure for jealousy, and it's the cure for this sense of aggression. Because think about it. If you're content in who you are, if you're content in what God has revealed to you and the things that you're pursuing, the knowledge that you're trying to gain, and the things that you feel God has called you to do, and you're not so worked up about what other people are doing, what other people think, what other people are called to do, then what is there left for you to really get angry about? Sometimes when I put messages together, it's the result of a series or some kind of theme that we're trying to pursue. This time, it's actually the result of an interaction I had with somebody. I had this interaction where there was an individual that was trying to, what they thought, correct me on some opinion I had on interpreting something in the Bible. And in doing that, they ended up going to a place in the Bible that talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. This is something we're all familiar with, it comes out of Leviticus 19, where God's giving us the 10 Commandments, and we start getting the basis of this golden rule that Christ Himself would reference, that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. But He tied that to the idea of rebuke. And in doing that, it got to a point of aggression, and it just seemed so disconnected from everything else that we had in the scriptures. And as I was thinking about that, I kept asking myself, why are people going to a place of anger and aggression in order to try to stick up for God, as if God can't stick up for Himself already? And when I was doing all of this, the counter to that I found myself going to was when we see in the Bible Paul talk about equipping ourselves with this gear of the Spirit, armor of the Spirit, and with a shield and a sword of truth and all this kind of stuff. And when you go into that scripture, you end up seeing this one verse. It's in Ephesians 6, verse 15, where it talks about the fact that we wear the sandals of readiness for the gospel of peace. And when I read that, it made me think this. Whenever individuals see us living out our faith, they see us being the person that we claim to be on Sunday, they should see us walking in peace. If they look at the direction that we came from and they see a pathway of destruction and turmoil and chaos instead of peace, then I think we have to ask ourselves, are we walking in the right direction? As Christians, we are called to a life of gentleness, of patience, of peace. Because when you look at what Christ did in his own earthly ministry, he was the physical embodiment of all of these things and so much more. So if we want to truly show Christ to a lost and dying world around us, are we going to be able to effectively do that on our own terms, using violent language, being, militaristic almost about how we live out our faith? Or are we going to do it by doing something unusual in our world today? And that is confronting differences with peace, compassion, and grace. This is what Christ did. I think this is what we're called to do as well as we live out our own faith. That's our lesson that we have for you today. I hope you're able to get something out of it. Until we can meet again, God bless.